All right, everyone. So we're going to begin with an introduction to close reading and annotation, which are, I'm sure, things that you have talked about before. Um, as far as instructions, if you have your packet with you, the summer reading packet, what we're going to be doing in this video is essentially the first 3 pages. So if you look at the front sheet, the one with all the due dates on it, on the back of that is a space where you can take notes on this video. On the facing page is a section from the Merchant of Venice, and on the back of that page is a soapstone chart that goes with that section of the Merchant of Venice. So those are the only 3 pages that we're working with today. The close reading stuff and annotation stuff that we're going to talk about has to do with a skill called rhetorical analysis, a kind of writing called rhetorical analysis. We're not going to get into the writing yet. We're just going to get into the sort of mindset of reading to prepare for that sort of writing. So here we go. Just so we're using common terminology, we're going to use this definition for close reading from the language of composition. So what they say, what Shea says, is that close reading is a careful reading that is attentive to organization, figurative language, sentence structure, vocabulary, and other elements of the text. So rhetorical analysis writing is going to involve you really taking apart something that you read and exploring why an author or a speaker made the choices that they made. So for instance, looking at, not just that an author used a metaphor in a certain place, but why that author used that metaphor there, what effect it ultimately had on his or her audience. So close reading here is really key. Close reading is a sort of reading that involves probably reading and rereading, slowing yourself way down so that you can kind of examine those kind of micro aspects of whatever text it is that you are reading. So the next thing to talk about is annotation. So when you're doing a close reading, you should always be annotating. And again, I'm sure you know this, but just so we're on the same page, annotation is the process of writing physically on what you are reading. In, 80% of what we'll read will be printed out for you so that you can write right on it. Everything in your summer packet, obviously, you're able to write on. I think writing on a thing is better than writing, for instance, in a notebook. Some people don't like writing in their books. I don't know. Whatever. You can make the decision for yourself. But annotation is making some sort of notes on what you're reading, physically on what you are reading. So when you're annotating, what are you looking for? If annotation is the process of sort of making notes on what you observe as you read, what are you looking for as you read? And the answer is that, broadly speaking, you're looking for patterns. You're looking for patterns of word choice, patterns of syntax or sentence structure, patterns of repetition, repeating the same word, or repeating the same phrase, or repeating the same structure. It could be that there is an interesting word choice, something that stands out to you. Figurative language, which is stuff you know already, that's like metaphors, similes, personification, hyperbole, things like that are generally important. Comparisons and contrasts, and there are a lot more things that you could look for. Essentially, if you notice it at this point in your career as like a fairly skilled reader, it's probably important. So even if you're not sure the name of the thing that you're observing, make note of it and describe it, and it will probably turn out to be significant. In terms of the process of how you're going to annotate, you can do whatever is most comfortable for you. I know some people like highlighting, some people like, underlining, some people like circling, some people like color coding stuff. You can do whatever's comfortable for you, but do a lot of it. So in the process of making observations about something that you read, the more observations you can make, the better, because it leaves you with, when you go to write, it leaves you with a lot more material to choose from if you've really gone over and combed through, what you're reading. So we'll think of this as sort of the hierarchy of annotation. So there's some, I forget his name, somebody, a psychologist, made a hierarchy of needs for humans, and at the very bottom is, food and water, and at the very top is things like, love and affirmation and sort of more emotional things. And the idea is that you can't do what's at the top, you can't have what's at the top unless you have what's on the bottom. So same idea here. At the very bottom, your annotation should first clarify for you what you are reading. If you misunderstand what you're reading, if there are, for instance, words you don't know that are barriers to your understanding, those sorts of things need to be clarified first before you move up the pyramid, or you simply won't be able to do it. If you misunderstand, for instance, like Hamlet's to be or not to be speech, if you think that is a speech about, I don't know, hamburgers or something, you're not going to be able to interpret it in any sort of meaningful way. So the base of the pyramid has to be clarity and understanding. So that's things like circling words you don't know and looking them up, paraphrasing. It may be that you're reading a text that is edited, and in that case, looking at the footnotes or the explanatory notes is going to help you. The first time you read through and annotate, it should be for simple clarification. Once you have a good understanding of what the text is saying on a basic level, you're going to identify devices and strategies that you see. So this is, naming things that are metaphors, things that are figurative language, making notes of those, underline it, and in the margin write, metaphor, simile, personification. This is like an inventory. So everything so far in the bottom two steps of the pyramid, this is all just summary. So remember that this is not, the writing task that we're talking about is not called rhetorical summary, it's called rhetorical analysis. So even though clarifying and then making, identifying devices and patterns, even though those make up most, perhaps, of the work that you'll be doing as you annotate, if you don't get to the top, you're going to be kind of in a hole when you go to start your writing. And what's at the top is analysis, interpretation, connecting the devices, connecting the things that are objectively there to a purpose. And this is where the work of analyzing is really going to come in for you. So you need to not just name the devices that are there. You need to name them, yes, but you also need to be able to tell me or your reader why you think the author chose to put them there, why they are significant. So we'll look at an example, and this is an example of something that I did in college. So this is from a William Wordsworth poem called The Prelude. And The Prelude is a very long biographical poem, and it's hundreds of pages long. Every page of my book looks something like this. So I told you to do whatever is most comfortable for you. I had a pretty loose system of kind of drawing arrows to things in the margins. Things that are highlighted in orange are things that I clarified. They're words I didn't know, and I looked them up in the dictionary. I told you, though, to do a lot of annotation. So obviously you can imagine a couple 100-page poem. If every page looks like this, I've done an awful lot of annotation. I will tell you that what's circled here, the note that I made in the bottom right corner of this one page, led to the big 20-page paper that I would write for that semester. So the reason that you want to make as many notes as possible is because you really never know, as you're reading, as you're annotating, what's going to turn out to be most important. And the more things you have to choose from, the more notes that you have to choose from, the better off you will ultimately, I think, be. So there's an example. And then the last thing that I want to talk to you about is the chart that you're going to have to fill out on the back. And I've used an acronym that I'm sure you've heard before. It's called SOAPstone. I think you've used it in history class probably before, if not in English class. So SOAPstone stands for speaker, occasion, audience, purpose, subject, and tone. So for the speaker, obviously you're identifying the speaker. You want to get more than just his or her name, though. So identify the speaker, but also make note of important information about them that could color the sort of message that they're going to deliver. For the occasion, you're talking about the context of when this is delivered. Whatever piece of writing you're talking about the time, the context in which the author or speaker is delivering it. The audience is obvious, the person or persons to whom the speaker is speaking. For the purpose, you're thinking about what the author is trying to get the audience to do or think. The subject is sort of like purpose, but it's more objective. So, for instance, the purpose of the I have a dream speech would be, maybe you could say that one of the purposes is, to get people to think about, I don't know, why African Americans don't have civil rights, or to get people to take action towards that goal. That would be the purpose. The subject would be civil rights. The subject is simpler. And then the tone, finally, is a word that you all should know, but it's the speaker's attitude towards his or her subject. All right, so this is going to be important, and it's also important to note that there's not just one correct thing to write for almost any of this stuff. For instance, purpose, there could be many purposes and sub-purposes. Audience, same thing. There could be a lot of interesting background about the speaker. Only a couple of these are totally objective. So that's it. What you're going to do with this information, I hope, is the first 3 pages. So the assignment that says at the top, AP English Language, close reading / annotation introduction, you should be making notes on that page. The next page has a snippet from Shylock's speech with some context. You're going to annotate that, make some notes, and then on the back you're going to fill out that chart as thoroughly as you possibly can. If you have any questions, get in touch with me. My email is dpirie@smushed, SMUHSD, San Mateo Union High School District.org. So dpirie@smushed.org. I've suggested that this is due on June 11th, which is in 5 days. Your first writing thing will be due a couple days after that, and you should be seeing the video for that on probably tomorrow or later tonight. Okay? So if you have any trouble, please get in touch with me.